there's something very uniquely Spanish about Spanish wines. If you've had enough of them, if you've tasted enough of them, you can certainly identify certain qualities in the wine that are more apparent in Spanish wines than maybe in Italian wines or in French wines. The same grape, in fact, like we'll take Garnacha in Spain versus Grenache in France, are two totally different creatures. And you're able to tell that by tasting them. Like I said, Spain has been making wine for a long, long time, literally thousands of years, if you want to go back far enough. To when the Romans, and in some cases the Greeks came in, the Etruscans, I'm sure, had some hand in it. So they've been making wine for a long time. And there's a certain quality that's come about the wines. There's certain identifiers, if you will, in the wines. So what we're going to taste tonight, we have a bunch of wines to try. Some of them, in my opinion, speak to this kind of old school, old world style of winemaking. Now what do I mean by that? Well, traditionally, there are certain methods that have taken place over the years that allow the wines to pick up that kind of rural, terroir-driven style. Things like, the barrels that they use, the way that they ferment, the way that they harvest, the way that they prune, how long they leave the reds in contact with the skins, what type of fermentation they use, what type of yeasts they're using. So there are a lot of different ways where the wines can, put it this way, the winemaker can influence the wine to taste a certain different way. Some of the other wines we're tasting tonight are, in my opinion, extremely New World. They're from the same regions, largely, same grape varietals, largely. I mean, you're going to get some similarities. You'll notice there's some cross-pollination in what the grape varietals are. But you're getting wines that are, in many cases, more saturated, richer, almost a sweeter fruit identification to them, bigger, almost thicker, richer wines. The style of aging, for example, they use a lot of what are called barriques, these small French or American barrels, which tend to impart a certain flavor in the wines. The fermentation is done a certain way. The grapes are left oftentimes on the vines longer so that they increase the sugar content in the grapes, and therefore you're able to extract a certain amount of fruit and intensity from the wines that maybe aren't done otherwise. So there's a more traditional style of Spanish winemaking, and then there's this new kind of New World style of Spanish winemaking. And I think it's beneficial to be able to try both this evening, which we'll be able to do. So, with that said, let me just go briefly over the wines we're going to taste tonight, and then we'll start in on the first. Yeah, actually, that would be great, thanks. The first one we're going to discuss is a wine called Confeixas, which is from Classical Wines of Spain, which is an importer that focuses, as you can guess from the name, on classical styles, more traditional styles of winemaking. It's a very unique blend, though, I have to admit. It's a blend of 3 grapes. 2 very traditional grapes from this region, as well as Chardonnay, which is much more of an international brand, grape. The next one we're going to taste from Artazuri is a wine from the Navarra region, which is, and you'll notice on your maps, I guess I can point it out here for you. Navarra is right up here. This kind of grayed out region, up towards the north, heading towards the Pyrenees. It borders Rioja, actually right on the, to its west. The grape there is Garnacha. Garnacha they do a lot with here, and wonderfully so. So we're going to be tasting a rosé from them. I know a lot of people have some unfortunate mindset against rosés, but this dry rosé is phenomenal. Spanish rosé is really where it's at. Spanish and French rosé, I drink far too much of each. The next one, Las Riojas de San Alejandro, is this is the 2003. This is a Garnacha as well. This is very much a New World style wine. This comes in from a gentleman named Eric Salem, who's an importer for European cellars. And the wines are very much, in my opinion, again, especially this one, has a tremendous extraction, tremendous fruit intensity, tremendous amount of power behind it. It's a wine that's been recognized in the press, in almost every press, in the wine trade as being very significant, a tremendous value, and a very, very intense wine. So in any case, Las Rojas is what we're going to be trying next. Mas Donis, the Monstat, we're going to taste as well. Garnacha, Syrah. This comes from the Tarragona region, which is a little bit further off to the east. We're then going to go to Castel de Remigotimbru. This is another big one that got a tremendous amount of points in a lot of the different wine press. A fully extracted, big, kind of heavier style wine that I think would be very interesting to taste as well. Very much a new style. Tempranillo, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon from the Costas del Segre region. We're going to then go to 2 other wines that are very much old school. The first one comes from a region called Ribera del Duero, which is a I wouldn't say it's new. It's a region that was really significantly recognized in the 80s. And it's about, if you were back up again in Navarra and you head down a little bit southwest, you'll find the Duero region. Some very powerful, very interesting wines come from this region as well. Tempranillo is the primary player, but you'll also see some other ones as well. And then we're going to end up with the wine Cosme Palacio. This is a Rioja wine from La Rioja region, which is probably the most popular region in Spain due to the amount of wine coming out of there that we've been able to have here for a long time. And again, this is just west of the Navarra region. And this is 100% Tempranillo as well. So those are the wines we're going to be tasting. What I'm going to do is, while we're pouring the wines, I'll give you just a little bit of information about the regions that we're going to be tasting so you can get an idea on what to expect from each of them. The first one, as I mentioned, Canfeixas is the producer. This is just called Blanc Selección. It's basically Blanco is all they're going to call it. Now you'll notice it says Denominación Origen down here, so it does meet the control standards of this region. So whatever the blend is, they're allowing that blend to exist in this region. So the three grapes I mentioned, Parellera, Macabeo, and Chardonnay. Now, something about this wine that's a little bit unique that a lot of people when they first taste it are like, this wine's not right. It's got the slightest bit of effervescence to it, and that's absolutely done intentionally. The wine is really designed to be a crisp, kind of summertime, warm weather wine. This is what they're drinking in, or this style of wine is what they're drinking in the wine bars in Barcelona. This is perfect with shrimp, with shellfish, with kind of a spicier style, a lot of that garlic, and it just adds a beautiful amount of clarity and cleanliness and freshness into the food. And that effervescence adds that even more so. It actually lifts the acidity a little bit and just adds a tremendous element to the wine. So you're not going to notice the wine bubbling or anything like that. But actually, do you want to put some in? Now this comes from a region called Penedès, which is, again, right near Barcelona. So we're right up here. The Penedès region is up in this region. Cava is the grape that, is the wine that comes from this area most notably. And Cava is really Spain's most famous sparkling wine. A lot of these same grapes are in there. You'll see Parellera, Macabeo, and another grape called Zarello showing up as the traditional Cava grapes. It's a wonderful wine. If you guys are interested in trying an inexpensive yet thoroughly enjoyable sparkling wine, I would definitely encourage you to look for Cava wines out there. They're not hard to find. Everyone's seen Frigidane before, right? The black bottles. That's Cava. Segura Viudas is another one. There's a lot of different players out there, but it's a fun wine. And the thing to note from this region, the reds, you'll see a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon from here. There's a lot of fuller style, but you also see a lot of international varietals. Like I said, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. You of course see Tempranillo, as well as some other more indigenous varietals. But the winemaker, I guess, of note here on the red side is a producer called Torres. He's been making wine for a long, long time. The Torres family is huge. They're one of the largest producers in Spain, and they have really made a name for themselves in this region. They do some fantastically fresh young wines, as well as some extremely capable old wines, in as much as they age very well. So, those of you that have this wine, let's start out, like it says, color-wise, what do we see here? What do we think for the color? Pretty pale, huh? It's got kind of a greenish hue to it. I think if you tip it, you notice the edge, the rim of the wine gets really, really light. It's almost watered out, but the inside stays this kind of almost greenish hue, a little straw kind of color to it. What about the aroma, though? What do we get here in the aroma? I'll look to the veterans of these classes to speak up. Anything jumping out at you? Any aromas? Anything? Again, it can be as oblique as possible. There's some real funky things we get out of here. If you read any of the wine publications, some of the stuff they mention, I'm not quite sure how they pull them out of these wines, but